Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Dynasty Junkies, episode 144 of your Dynasty Junkies here. I am Andrew Hall at Andrew Hall FF. With me tonight, we've got both co-hosts. All three of us are on the show together. What is that about? So I'll start with the man to my right, I guess technically, Rocky. How are you, sir?
I can't believe you did that point thing right. I never get that right. See, I
You got
can't
it.
do it.
Nailed
The
it.
mirror thing always screws me up. It's real easy when you're on the bottom.
Scott's got it easy.
Nowhere to go from here but up.
That's right.
But yeah, this is fun. We haven't done one of these in a while. We've done them here and there. It's always fun to do an all find me a trade episode, which is what we got in store for you tonight. So I love being here with both of you two. It's a rare occurrence, so it's always fun when we get to do it.
Oh yeah, it's a good time for sure. And of course, if we've already introduced it's the three of us, then that means underneath on the screen down over here, we've got Scott Sidlow. How are you, Scott?
Listen, I mean, we had to give the listeners a break from this insane list of guests that we've had, So like just without one tonight, it'd be a little more nonsense. But that's okay. Like we'll give them a break because we got a lot more coming.
Yep.
We have a hell of a run lined up too, coming up here. So it's actually going to be a really fun summer with a lot of fun guests, some different spins on some things. And yeah, man, let's go FMAT Palooza.
That's right. I called it the FMAT Monster Show because again, like I don't want to keep saying FMAT Spectacular or like FMAT Palooza is a good one. That's a good one, Rocky. Write that one down for the episode title. It's a good one. But we can only do so many of these. But I love when we do these too, Rocky. To kind of go back to your point, this is kind of the one segment of our show is that Find Me a Trade that we get. Everybody comes on at the end of the show and we do this. This is the perfect time of year to do this. This is probably the most stale time for a lot of my leagues where the rookie draft is done. OTAs really haven't started, and we got some voluntary mini camp news and blurbs and all that, but it's really the quiet time before the storm of the summer. We don't have any new signings. We don't have any, luckily, no injuries, right? Like knocking on wood. But I think it's just, everybody's got their guys, and it's really getting harder to make trades. And I think a lot of times when you get to a league like this, or sorry, a time of year like this in your league, you might find it gets a little stale and slow and all this, it's stagnant. We're here to help with that. So again, Jerry in the chat tuning in. Hello, guys. What's up, Scott? Apparently, Scott gets the shout out, not you and me, Rocky.
Me and you are chopped liver, Andrew.
Thanks, Jerry. Won't forget that on the next trade you send me. Anyway, we're gonna kick right into it, right? It's FMAT. Let's go with the Find Me a Trade. And with that, of course, I have to use our buddy, our best friend.
Find me a trade. Find me a trade.
Let's go. It's Find Me a Trade season. Let's go, Brian.
Are we doing that for all three, Andrew?
You're damn right we are. All right, so here comes the first Find Me a Trade. All right. Now, I thought since there's three of them, we could do this a little bit different. I'm going to show them all on my screen. But, Rocky, if you want to read some of the settings here and Chris's thoughts while I get it pulled up, that'd be great.
Yes, it is you did say it was Chris McConnell.
It is Chris McConnell is the first one, yep.
Yep, that's who submitted it. It's a 12-team PPR, 1 QB league. What's that? with no tight end premium, so a little different for us here. And it's a start 10, quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, and 3 flex are the starters. And Chris says he's pretty confident he'll be competing this year. Chase, he's got Jamar Chase, Breece Hall, Ramondre, Godwin, London, and Jameson, all guys he likes. But worried about Ramondre and Godwin situations. He mentioned some of his draft picks, but they're not totally relevant because he then traded them after he sent this in, or at least traded one of them. But he had a first and 3 seconds. I believe he traded down from the 102 to the 103. And he says he doesn't trust the combination of Dak, Geno, and Brady, even in a 1 QB league. League converted from a long-standing redraft league last year. We're coming up on our first rookie draft, which, as we said, has been completed, and you'll hear that when you hear his roster.
Yep.
And obviously says he'd love to know our thoughts. And you put down a couple trades he did do after he sent this in to us.
Yep, he updated it. Yep.
Okay, so yeah, he moved the 102 and 111 for 103 in Fields, and he did it and end up drafting JSN at the 103 because it's a 1 QB league. And then 211 and a pair of 24 thirds for the 201, which I'm not sure who he drafted there. And Nico Collins for 301 to get Tajay Spears.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly run through the team. We got a new way of displaying it. We're going to see how this goes, but this is by our friend, the FS Rookie, Fantasy Sport Rookie on Twitter, at FS Rookie. I think it's pretty good. I like it. It's very compact. It's all one screen, which is nice. But yeah, so this team is Tater Wolf, which is Chris. He's been on the show a couple times, obviously, but he's got Geno, Dak, and Justin Fields now. Running backs, he's got Breece Hall, Ramondre Stevenson, Chase Edmonds, and some other scrubs. Receiver, he's got Jamar Chase, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Drake London, Chris Godwin, Puka Nacua, Jameson Williams, Charlie Jones, Jaden Reed. Some good names there on receivers. Tight end, he's got Chig Okonkwo is always nice. Greg Dulcich is nice. David Njoku is not bad, right? Elijah Higgins, Luke Schoonmaker, all that. And then he's got 124 first, full 25 and 26 picks. So that's the team. And then with that, Scott, do you want to go into your trade first?
Sure, will do.
Kind of let us know what you think about this. I know you wrote a pretty good little essay there that I thought was really good to cover to start with.
So yeah, I just I was confused at first because I was reading through like the picks and getting Anthony Richardson at 202 and things like that, and like even in a one quarterback league, there's no chance he's falling to 202. I think his ADP is like 106. Even in a one quarterback league. So yeah, but I love the move that he made to go get basically Gibbs for what, Fields and JSN, or Gibbs, I guess, and whatever the 111 ended up being. So Fields was the right guy to get there.
And 111 is like a mid-second, one QB.
Yeah, I mean,
Josh Downs or something. I mean, it's not terrific. Yeah.
Sure. So now having, pairing Dak and Geno with Fields, that gives you have the floor there with Geno and Dak. You can plug those guys in any week, play the matchups with those two. But having Fields will give you that upside to, like, if he makes the jump this year, I mean, that's going to be absolutely huge. So I think looking at this league, the interesting thing, and I think this was the league that he mentioned was a redraft league and converted to Dynasty. So I don't know if it means like you guys did your draft and then like converted, or like it was a redraft and then you guys started over and drafted, but it looks very balanced across the board.
Yes.
It was really hard to find a team that was like, oh, this is a rough team right here that needs some youth that you can move some of these guys to. Everybody was kind of like, okay, have a few good players at each position, really solid. And so I would say that even if you think you're a contender, you might think, I think you're more of a pretender, but looking at the league, I'd say it's wide open. Like anybody can win this thing. So my best advice that I could give you is that I almost probably wouldn't make a move right now. I would just kind of maybe throw out some feelers here and there, have some conversations, but kind of see how the season plays out and then use your capital, your youth, your depth to make those moves to go all in. And so a move that I might make, or if I was trading now, if I said, hey, I want to, just go get some points in my lineup. I think having 6 tight ends in a non-premium league is just not the correct roster build. It's too many, using up too many positions, and especially 4 quarterbacks too. So you're using 10 positions there, or 10 spots on those 2 positions when you're only going to be starting probably 2 of those guys, which means that's 8 bench spots there. So what I'd like to do is maybe use some of the hype that we have on some of these young guys, Greg Dulcich, Chig Okonkwo. Those are 2 guys I really like, but they basically have new offenses and new teams around them. So we're not really sure what's going to happen with them. Sure, they could take the next step. But what I'd like to try to do, if I can, is maybe move those guys to a team like Luke K17 for Deontay Johnson. That was one where I felt like you could just get a not an old receiver, but obviously not super young. Maybe try to move a couple of those tight ends and get Deontay. Maybe you could get a third back on top. But just get one of those pieces that will put points in your lineup right away instead of waiting on some of those young tight ends that essentially are just never going to see your lineup.
Yep. And I'll just kind of pivot into my trade because it's almost identical and we can kind of talk about them together. But mine was with Ethan Jellyfish to send Chig, Dulcich, and one of your quarterbacks like Geno I'd rather send Geno than the others, but send Chig, Dulcich, Geno to Ethan Jellyfish for Mark Andrews. Same logic, right? Let's consolidate some of this. I think you've got way too many tight ends here, Chris. This is, again, if it was a tight end premium, there'd be a lot more premium on these players, but having 3 startable-ish tight ends with Njoku, Dulcich, and Okonkwo is okay, but it's not great. I think Scott's point about it being a pretender more than a contender, I kind of agree with. I feel like you're just on the edge of this. I would also think there's another trade you could do for a top tier something else, but I would try to just tier up at tight end. That would be my first move. And again, it's sort of what Scott was saying too. Like, let's get some of these other tight ends that have name value and recognition and all this, and see if we can get something better. And I personally think that the team that has Mark Andrews, Ethan Jellyfish, only has Lamar Jackson and Trevor Lawrence at QB, so he's kind of thinner at QB. I know in some leagues with one QB especially, nobody's really thin at QB, but having a third one might be nice, especially with some of the injury history with Lamar. And, you then have Lawrence only if something happens. And so there is some logic in having a backup. But I guess I'm curious about what you think of that one, Rocky. Or both of those, really, because they're kind of close.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea, and because it's not tight end premium, Mark Andrews' value is a little less. Yeah, so I don't know that Geno moves the needle very much in a non-superflex league, though.
Well, no, and it's more of like a throw-in just to kind of, what else do you need? What other nickels can I throw in to get your quarter kind of a thing?
Yeah, so I don't hate it. I think you might have a better chance of getting the Deontay one done.
Yep, I agree.
Just because his value is less, whether you're talking tight end premium, not tight end premium. I still think Deontay's kind of a notch below Mark Andrews, even a non-tight end premium at this point, because everyone is so down on him. And he's still a great wide receiver. You don't just luck into 140 targets. Sorry, but and it didn't go great last year. He didn't score touchdowns, which was a big part of it. I think did he have 0? It was like, if not, it was like 2 or less. It was very limited. Yeah. But yeah, that was the big thing last year. His touchdowns were so down, and even relative to what the team scored, they were ridiculous. But yeah, I think you have a better chance of getting that one done. But I think both of them are fine. Like, I think you can. I don't think that's an outrageous ask to try and get Andrews for those. I mean, there's 2 young guys, both with a decent amount of hype behind them. Those 2 young tight ends. So
the other thing is, again, that Ethan Jellyfish's team has Mark Andrews and Daniel Bellinger at tight end, and that's it. So, if I had Mark Andrews, I'd be okay to break him up. And then you're getting 2 potentially startable tight ends, both tight end 2s kind of a thing, like in that back end tight end 1, like everybody else. But again, I feel like if you're lean at a position like that and your only backup is Bellinger, I'd much rather have, Chig Okonkwo starting every week and then plugging in Dulcich for a bye week than Bellinger. Again, it depends on the other manager, as always. Like, none of these trades, all of these trades are set in a vacuum, but none of them occur in a vacuum. But what was your trade, Rocky? I guess where did you want to go with yours? I was just going to
say with yours, though, it also depends on how, like, what he thinks he's doing this year, because his team is weird. Right. Like, he has some pieces, but he's got Henry and Cook, who are both very old at this point, for running back. And then not much else at running back, and his receivers are kind of all over the place. A lot of young guys who've never done anything, but he also has Amari Cooper.
Amon-Ra.
Yeah, Amon-Ra is basically the only real solid piece he has there. Amari's solid too, but not if you're trying to go younger. So I don't know what he's doing.
The Isaiah Hodgins slander has to stop, Rocky. He's got. I mean, that's no. I'm kidding. But no, I'm right there with you. Like that.
Chase Claypool went for pick 32 overall. So
I know, right? I
wish Scott was here when I said that.
Oh, he's listening. But if I was, again, I'm with you. If I was at Ethan Jellyfish, I would definitely be leaning into a rebuild at this point and moving off those running backs, trying to get some other assets. Again, there is some logic here too in saying, well, maybe you can trade some picks or something to a team like that, but I don't want to. I mean, again, you've only got 124 first. You're digging already into 25 picks. I don't want to go that far out on credit if I can help it. But again, if like the trade is, hey, add your 25 second and I'll do it, I'd probably do it, right? Like that's close enough.
Well, yeah, and you are giving them 2 young players too. So
Right.
if he, that's what I'm saying though. I'm curious. Like I obviously we have no way of knowing, but just
Well,
like
Chris will let us know.
how he thinks like his team. Does he think his team is competing? Because I don't think his team is competing. But
Yeah.
but he has some older players on there, so you never know what he's like. Could this be a guy who's trying to break stuff down and just hasn't been able to move him yet, or is he actually trying to compete and he thinks this is good enough? You don't know. But
I've seen that happen before. But yeah, what was your trade?
Yeah, so I'll get to my trade. I agree with both of you that I think Pretenders may be a little harsh, but I definitely think it's a more middling team. I think it has a chance to compete, but it's definitely not like top tier contender. I agree with that for sure. But I still tried to kind of go with something that maybe helps him compete this year, while also not necessarily aging him too much. So I guess trying to straddle the fence sort of like he is right now. So,
yeah, it's the theme. Yeah.
Breece Hall, I have trading Breece Hall. I was kind of trying to pivot down from Breece Hall. It's not much of a pivot down because this guy's valued pretty highly too at this point. But Breece Hall to Sound One for Jahmyr Gibbs and Christian Kirk. Hall is going to be an issue this year. We talked about that a little bit. I think that was before we came on. We were talking about our teams in Junkies too, and we have me and Scott have Breece Hall there, and there's definitely a worry that even if he's back for the start of the year, he's probably not going to be himself. Guys off of Achilles are never as good year one as they are going forward. So there's that, and Sound One is kind of like a youngish team anyway. He's got is that no, I'm sorry. Sound One is a guy that's competing. So you're kind of banking on him just hearing the Breece Hall name. That's what I was thinking.
Right.
And again, he could be great. Breece Hall could be Adrian Peterson and be a machine and run for 2,000 yards this year. I don't know. But you also got to think they're probably going to be a little more passive. Not that hurts Breece Hall totally, because he can catch it out of the backfield. But you get Dobbins and you get Kirk. I think the team that we're trading for Tater Wolf needs a little depth. That's an issue on his end. You guys know I love Dobbins, and I think in addition to production, I think there's going to be a value increase because I think he's going to do really well this year. And Kirk's just a nice piece. He's got his receivers. He's got a bunch of names, but how much are you getting out of Jameson Williams and JSN? And who knows with Godwin this year with the quarterbacking there. So Kirk's a nice depth piece. And I just figured try and get him a little more depth, maybe capitalize on Breece Hall value. And Sound One, I don't know that it matters that much, but he does have Dobbins and Edwards. So maybe he cares that he'd have Breece Hall and Michael Carter. That's another little bonus to it that if Hall does miss the beginning of the year. So that's what went into my thinking. I just kind of maybe break Breece Hall down a little bit and still stay young. I think I said about getting Dobbins because that was my original trade, but I meant Gibbs. You would get Gibbs. Yeah. So.
Well, so I'll jump in here and just say that, again, to reference this back, the main reason I think I'm calling this team not a full-on contender is partially what Scott said, that the league is very balanced. It's really hard to find a weak team in this one, and it's hard to find like the stud team, especially not being tight end premium and single QB like that. I don't know. I feel like every team has a better chance to be a stud when you only have to start one QB, right? It's not like you have Superflex can be your weak spot. So it means if everybody's kind of in that middle, let's say everybody is contending, then nobody is contending. And so I think you're kind of being on that fence. Your best option, especially since you just converted to Dynasty too, your best option is to try to be maybe the first to the bottom. And you only have 124 first. You've got Jameson Williams and JSN, who I think are both going to be a little rough this year. Same with Drake London. You could honestly look at this and say, well, then heck, I'm pivoting all the way. I'm going to trade away Geno and Dak and just kind of run with Fields and Howell. And maybe you run with Dulcich and Okonkwo and you kind of go that line and just say, I'm kind of not tanking, but I'm going to limp into the season and see how it goes, because you're right on that fence, which is a thing we said before too. Like when you're kind of not sure of your team, you can wait a couple weeks and see how it goes. And when, if you're 4-0, there's your decision, go in, right? If you're 0-4, punt. But the sooner you decide that, the better, because the first person to decide that usually gets the best deals. So again, with the team that you've got right now, Chris, I like the build. I don't hate it, but I don't love it. And I think there's a couple little tweaks like we mentioned here, but Scott, before we pivot off of this and go to the next one, do you have any other thoughts or things you want to bring up regarding Chris's team here?
Yeah, I mean, Pretender's not meant to be meant to be an insult. Like, it's just the fact that, like, you look at this roster and you go, there's a lot of talent here and there's a lot of youth, which is good. That's what we want. But, you know, Breece Hall's got the injury situation. Ramondre is a Patriots running back. You know, Godwin's got a downgrade at quarterback no matter who he gets. Jameson Williams, who knows with him right now? You know, JSN, I mean, how many receivers are there? Like, is Geno Smith really going to support all these guys?
Right.
And then which one of your tight ends is going to emerge? And, you know, are you going to start the right quarterback every week? You know, like, there's just so many variables. So that's what I mean by pretender. It's not necessarily that you can't win, but being so balanced right now, you need more time to gather more information and see what happens, because things are going to happen over the next few months that will start to shape this league. And so it's not fun to wait. It's not fun to be patient. You know, we're all trade addicts here, so we love to make trades, but sometimes you just gotta maybe sit on your hands a little bit, get some more information and wait, because the opportunities will present themselves to go one way or the other. Maybe like Andrew said, maybe you just break it down and, hey, let's build a juggernaut. You've already got the beginnings of that. Or you might be able to push to go all in and just go win this thing. So it really depends on what you want to do. And, you know, more information is always going to be better, obviously. And so right now we're in that time of year. Not a lot happens because of that reason. We don't really have a lot of information, and people are kind of waiting, and we've had our rookie drafts. So unfortunately, sometimes that's the best advice.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of echoing a little bit about what Jerry says here, which is sometimes the best move you can do is not to make a move. And I think too, especially with it just going from redraft to dynasty, that's a fun little wrinkle that I like. And I like the idea of doing that. But I've seen a couple leagues, and I've been in a couple leagues that have made big changes, not quite that big, but big changes. And everybody's a little trigger shy to be like, I don't know what I want to do yet. And like, especially if the draft just happened, like I could see this being like, let's just wait and see, because ultimately you could make some moves now that you regret in a couple of months. So maybe the best move is to do some little things, to trim your roster a little bit, to try to see if you can send Geno Smith and David Njoku for a second. You know what I mean? Like, just try to clean up some of that and pick up some other running backs that you think might have more value on your bench. Just because you're not going to start Elijah Higgins and Luke Schoonmaker, especially if you have 6 tight ends. Like, I don't know. I would be more than happy to get rid of some of that and move your depth around. But overall, again, not a bad team at all. I think it's got a lot of potential, and I'm really curious to see how it goes. Any other thoughts? Are we good? I think we covered Chris's team pretty well there. What do we think?
I think so. I was just going to say, a little while back in the chat, Jerry had thrown out a trade question. I figured we could
talk about that.
Go over real quick.
Especially because it involves Gibbs, right? You just talked
about exactly. 12-team PPR Dynasty, Jahmyr Gibbs or DJ Moore and Jerry Jeudy.
I'll go first. I want Gibbs. I mean, I like Moore a lot. Don't get me wrong, but I think Gibbs is going to have a lot more value in the season, and running backs are getting harder and harder to really trust, and receiver production seems to be easier to replace, even though you're getting 2 there. I'd love to know more info about the team, but in a vacuum, I'm going Gibbs. I just think that that's the better choice. What do you think, Scott?
I think this is just value. Gibbs is probably worth more. I mean, 12-team PPR. It doesn't say super flex, so
no. You can assume.
I don't know.
Does the value change if it's super flex or 1 QB?
I don't like DJ Moore or Jerry Jeudy here. Well, it was going to change for how I was going to lay it out with picks, but you know, seeing as how Gibbs just got picked, so I would say the 102, but maybe it's the 105. You know, would you trade the 105 for DJ Moore and Jerry Jeudy? Like, I probably wouldn't. Those are 2 players that I just don't understand the hype on them. You know, everybody, like every podcast I listen to, those 2 are like headlining the buys.
Yeah.
You know, or at least for wide receiver. And I don't get it. I don't get it at all.
I get it for Moore, but
it's
don't
the
get
wrong
it for
question to ask. I don't get it for Moore at all, actually.
Scott hates anything Bears related.
Listen,
I know. He's a Bears fan. I know. It's just how he is.
The situation is last year, the Bears and the Panthers ran 5 plays total different. 945 for the Bears, 950 for the Panthers. Okay. The Bears were 40-60 pass to rush ratio. The Panthers were 49-51, just about even. DJ DJ Moore had 118 targets on that, and obviously shitty quarterbacks. So even if you think Fields is an upgrade, okay, that offense will have to increase by 10% and then balance their pass to rush ratio and give him a 30% target share for him to even be relevant with all of those targets. I mean, he's not, if you look at the guys that produced around him on like 118, 120 targets, that would be like Jalen Waddle, Jamar Chase. He's not those guys. He doesn't have that skill set. Like, he needs significant volume for him to be a number one receiver. So it just doesn't make any sense to me. The situation to me is absolutely no different than where he's been. You know, they got the quarterback upgrade, but he's not there anymore. Right. So the situation to me has not changed. So I don't get DJ Moore.
You're selling me. You're making a lot of sense there. What do you think about this one though, Rocky, since you kind of were the one that wanted to talk about it? Gibbs or DJ Moore and Jerry Jeudy?
Yeah, I'm with you too. I lean the Gibbs side here. I mean, those two guys, they're just humongous question marks right now, both of them. Yep. Jeudy looked nice at the end of last year, but you know, we don't know if that's going to carry over for sure. We don't know if Russ is going to rebound fully. We expect he is with Peyton, but I definitely have high hopes for Russell Wilson. And if I'm right, I mean, that probably is going to mean a lot of good things for Jerry Jeudy. I've flipped from where I was last year. I was very much Sutton over Jeudy. Now, I am Jeudy over Sutton. I've seen the light, which probably means Sutton's going to ball out this year. But
I agree with you there.
but yeah. So, but I mean, either of them could totally be like wide receiver 30 or wide receiver 10. Like, who knows?
Or even lower, honestly. Like, he could be like wide receiver 60. You know what I mean? Like, have another bad year. Yeah.
So I think, you got to take the value in Gibbs. He's super hyped, and I do think he's going to perform this year. I think they're going to use him a lot. You don't draft a running back at 12 if you don't have a plan for him, and it's not going to be like what it was with Swift. I mean, he's going to be involved. And
they got a whole new running back room, right? They really did like revamp that whole thing with David Montgomery too. So I feel like it's a whole different ball game in Detroit, and I think Gibbs is going to see a lot of touches.
Yeah, and you mean, we saw how excited they were to get him on draft day there. So I just think he's definitely gonna produce. He's gonna touch the ball more than Swift did, even with Montgomery there. And like I said, his value at this point is already sky high, and if he produces, it's just gonna be ridiculous. So
I agree. So all right, so with that, we're gonna move into our second segment of the night, which is one of my favorite segments on this show.
Find me a trade.
That's right. It's our Find Me a Trade segment, everybody. I don't know if you've heard of it. We're going to do one of these. We do it every week. It's a good time. So this time, I'm going to read some of the information while I pull up the team. This one is submitted by Corey Deaton, who is, again, familiar with the league. And ironically enough, the league he submitted has Chris in it also, which I thought was hilarious. Has a couple of familiar names that we've seen on Sleeper now. So this one is, again, submitted by Corey Deaton at Dynasty Eeyore. The league is the Superflex Dynasty. It's a 12-team half PPR, no tight end premium, but it is a Superflex league, which is nice because we just did a 1 QB, which I know leaves a really weird taste in your mouth, Rocky. So we're going to try to do a better job here. His thoughts, pretty straightforward. Started rebuilding last year after winning the league 2 out of the first 3 years. So he's working on free money. Gotta love that. Got 3 firsts and multiple seconds. Got some good rookie wide receivers last year. My running back room is weak, and I could use a better QB3. Now, again, when we got this submission, it was before the draft, so he doesn't have those picks. He turned them into players, but man, did he turn them into players. I got to be honest, this is a pretty good roster. Let me pull this one up. And then, Scott, do you want to read through the roster, or are you able to do that?
Yep.
Okay, I think we're good to go. If that shares, yes. And I'll move that.
Okay,
go ahead.
So at quarterback, wrong team. Here we go. At quarterback, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Russell Wilson, Hendon Hooker. That is a nice quarterback room.
I'm okay with
running
that.
back, Chris Rodriguez, Austin Eckler, Tony Pollard, Najee Harris, Chris Evans, Zamir White, Devin Achane, Sean Tucker, Zach Charbonnet. Wide receiver, Keenan Allen, Tyler Lockett, Corey Davis, Cooper Kupp, Tim Patrick. Man, that is old. Oldies but goodies. Deontay Hardy, Isaiah Hodgins,
it gets
Josh
younger.
Palmer, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Christian Watson, Tyquan Thornton, Rashid Shaheed. Yeah, that's a beautiful wide receiver. Yeah. Tight ends, George Kittle, Mark Andrews, Daniel Bellinger, and Michael Mayer. No 24 first or second, but has the remaining picks in 24, 25, and 26.
And again, remember, not a tight end premium, but Kittle and Andrews. I mean, I'm feeling good with that. And Michael Mayer. I mean, again, like that's, this is I'm feeling verklempt over here, Corey. This is a good team. I'm digging this one. So why don't we start with you on this one, Rocky? What was your trade to help our friend Corey out here?
So yeah, when I looked at this, I kind of thought about what Scott was saying with the last one, which is like, don't make any trades, maybe, because it is a really good team. But excuse me,
he's choking up over there.
Yeah, I know. It's so good. I just can't talk. But
we just went from 6 to midnight over here,
buddy.
But if I'm going to make a trade, what I probably want to do is maybe do some consolidation. He's a lot of good players. So I went big, and I have send Chris Olave, Christian Watson, and if you need to, throw in Tyler Lockett for Justin Jefferson. And yeah, so I mean, it's going to take a lot to get JJ. Yep. People aren't going to want to trade him, but it still leaves him with Jefferson, Garrett Wilson, Keenan Allen, Keenan Allen, Cooper Kupp. So that's still a pretty nice wide receiver room, even if there's not a lot of depth there, and you got to start 3. You got 4 really good receivers there, and the guy who has Jefferson, he has the aforementioned DJ Moore, who's a question mark. He has Chris Godwin, who's kind of a question mark with no quarterback this year, and pretty much nothing else besides Justin Jefferson. And he does have what looks like a competing team around there. Mm-hmm. He's got Kelsey, he's got Barkley, he's got Swift, he's got good quarterbacks. He's got Mahomes and Watson. So he looks like he's trying to compete this year. And obviously Jefferson helps him do that, but he does. I think this was a start 3, right? Start 3 receivers?
Yes. No, sorry. 2. So quarterback, 2 running back, 2 receiver, tight end.
Even still, even with only 2 receivers. Yeah, a lot of flexes. But even with he's still only got basically maybe 2 1/4 receivers. So
well, yeah, he's got Jefferson, DJ Moore, and Godwin. Like that's a solid 3, but it falls off a cliff after that. Yeah,
and to me, it's questionable whether DJ Moore and Godwin is a solid 3. As much as I love both of those guys. Yep. So yeah, and you're giving him a lot to try and pry Justin Jefferson away. I think this is a fair deal. I think, but I'm curious what you guys think.
Well, again, I'll kind of go first here and just say that I don't know if this is enough for me to get rid of Jefferson, but I like the thought. Also, just for the sake of transparency, whenever you do a trade like this, where it's like a 3-for-1 or something, I always like to look like, does the guy have players he can drop? And he does, right? This other team, Ron Hall has Sam Howell, which again could be traded or something. Taylor Heineke, that was a name. I was like, you don't need that guy anymore. Jarrett Stidham, you could probably drop him if you had to. Like, I don't know. I'd be like Kenneth Gainwell maybe is worth holding on to. I don't know. Some of those guys, like your later round picks, I'm just not sold on. So I like this trade, but I think it might take a little more to get Jefferson, and I'm perfectly fine to give up a little more just to get that stud for sure. And then I'll kick it to you, Mr. DJ Moore. Puff Pass Kick here in the comments saying Sidlow spins house on the south side of Chicago on Saturdays under the moniker DJ Moore. That's brilliant, Puff Pass Kick. I like that one. That's really good. So Scott, what did you think about Rocky's trade here? The big boy trade.
So funny. That reminds me of something that's really dumb. But when I was growing up, my friend's older brother thought he was going to be a DJ, and he couldn't come up with a name. He drove a Honda Civic, so his name was DJ Civ. So I drove a Tahoe, so I was like, oh, I'm gonna put all my like usernames as DJ Ta now. So
I like it.
It's really funny.
You're gonna be DJ Ho.
I was thinking the same.
Right, yeah, right. Probably make more sense, but I was also like, 16, so who knows. Yeah, I mean, listen, this is the right thing to do here. Go big or go home, right? Like go after the big dogs. It's pretty close. It's not that far off from me. I really like Olave.
If I'm gonna like, a lot of people have Olave. Yeah, it was like wide receiver 6, 7.
He's
8,
rocketing up the board. Yep, I agree.
Yeah, so I mean, if I'm going, I have Justin Jefferson, but not much else. Especially considering this is half PPR, not tight end premium. I may want to diversify if I'm the other team. In that case, so I could see that as a possibility. And just getting the different style of players there with Olave and Watson, really swinging for the fences to try to replace those points in my lineup. So yeah, I think it makes sense. And obviously for For Corey, this is what we want to do, is go after guys like Jefferson. So I like it.
Yeah, and at least just starts the conversation, even if that doesn't get it done.
Yeah, it's not offensive. It's not
exactly. It's not like screw you. I'm not taking that for. It's not.
I think it's a fair offer for sure. It's not like it's not a smash reject. It's one that'll make me think for a little bit. But again, Ron Hall also has Travis Kelce and Kyle Pitts. Like, this team is just loaded, right? Like, what it made me do with Corey's team, I was like, man, Ron, you're getting me off of Klimt again. Like, this team is locked too. But that's where you want a guy like Justin Jefferson. But also, I would feel like the worst players on Ron's team are worse than Corey's players, right? Yeah. So, like, he's studs and duds even harder. And I feel like that's where I would probably be okay splitting up Jefferson for some depth. Because, again, as much as we hate it, injuries are going to happen. Even if he gets dinged up, he's out of game. Like, you're missing a ton of points there, even though it is only two receiver. And again, just there's some same kind of thing at a running back. He's got DeAndre Swift, Saquon Barkley, and then it falls off a cliff again. Like, he's all studs and duds. So again, it depends on what this team really wants to do. If Ron is really looking to go all in, and I think he is, I think this roster is that kind of roster. I could see him sticking with Jefferson until he gets a deal that pries him out of it. But at the same time, that's a fair offer to start with.
Let me ask you, Andrew, since I know you were a little more hesitant when I first said it. If it's Wilson, Watson, Lockett, are they the same tier for you, or does that move the needle a little more than Olave does?
It's close, but you know what I was thinking, like, which I don't know if this would get done, but my only variation that I would really jump on would be Olave and Wilson. Right?
Yeah.
Like, give me Olave.
I don't want to give up Olave and Wilson.
Well, I'm just saying that's
trying to hold on to one of them. Yeah,
that's one that I would probably do. I'd be like, you know what? You're giving me 2-for-1, two studs up and coming for a slightly older Justin Jefferson, who could be the 101 in receivers, right? Like, that to me it's kind of like that overpay price. But even on DTC, it's got Justin Jefferson ahead by 4 points on that. So
wow,
it still feels like that trade is light according to the calculator. Which, again, not saying that's the Bible. But if it feels heavy to me and the calculator says it's light, I would do
PLF and I think it was slightly over for the package.
Yeah, that's usually the indicator that it's a good trade, right?
Correct. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Slightly one way. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I like that. Again, I think that it depends if the other person's a Watson fan, then that works, right? And I don't mind Lockett as a throw-in for a contending team, right? Like, just
that was my thinking. Yeah,
I feel like Lockett's going to be a hot potato. He's going to be all over every Dynasty league is going to have a ton. Oh, and here we go. We got Corey with some feedback. This is what we love. Jefferson might be impossible to get from Ron. He used to have Chase and Jefferson, but sold Chase to get Mahomes. See, that's the context we need. So that means you might have to overpay to get him, right? He also won last year. Thank you, Corey. So this is where it's like you might have to do Olave, Wilson, and Lockett. Like, you might have to do like way much to get this, which at what point are you just blowing up your team and being like, well, hang on, is that worth it? So I like the trade, though, for the record.
His lack of depth means he should split the asset, but at the same time, if he won, he's going to have the overconfidence that it can happen again.
And again, riding with free money, that kind of thing, where it's like,
and I'm not sure I want to move Olave and Wilson for Jefferson. But
I agree. I'd keep
even if he did, if he wanted to, he still has Jefferson, Allen, Lockett, Kupp, and Watson. He would be losing Wilson and Olave. So it's not like it would even kill him to do that. Like Corey to do that if he wanted to overpay. To me, that's a little bit of an overpay.
Well, what I'm saying is Olave and Wilson gets it done. I'd prefer the Olave and Wilson side.
Yeah, right? And you probably have to. You might have to overpay to get just Jefferson.
Exactly, and that's where it goes. Like, if you really want Jefferson and the guy really won't give him up,
anyone could send those two guys for Justin Jefferson. It's probably Corey's team here.
Yeah, this team can afford it. That's for sure. Well, I'll get into mine next. It's not quite as crazy, but it's up there. I think I did an okay job. This one is a trade with Coach Reinecker, where you would send Russ Wilson, Austin Eckler, and Najee Harris for Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor. Now, on the face of it, this comes out somewhat even, but I think you're kind of splitting some of the hairs here. Anthony Richardson obviously has a ton of upside. I know a lot of people think he's the 101, 102 in this rookie class. You're going to have to overpay for him. And I think it's a little light, but again, all of my offers are a little low to start with. That's kind of what I do, where I'm like, let me send this as a starting shot across the bow and see what I can get. I'd be fine adding another piece to this if he wants a Lockett, for instance, or, hell, I might even do like Kupp instead of Najee, or just as kind of moving some pieces around. But I just think that it helps consolidate a little bit. I'd much rather have Anthony Richardson as my QB 2-3 than Russ Wilson at this point. I mean, again, you're not starting him with Allen and Jackson on your roster, so you can kind of let him sit there and learn. And then also you're taking on all that risk too. As much as we think that Anthony Richardson's going to be a stud, he might not be. You're also adding 2 Colts, which again, depending on the team, they might be a Colts team and be like, no, I don't want to give them up, right? Like that can happen sometimes. But Coach Reineker's got a ton of quarterbacks and no running backs. He's got Jonathan Taylor, Michael Carter, and Tyjae Spears, and that's it. So again, if I'm the other team, I'm like, well, maybe I split Taylor up, right? And to split Taylor up into Najee and Eckler, I feel like is pretty hefty for Taylor right now anyway. And then obviously Wilson kind of to fill in that QB. So I don't know, Rocky, what do you think about my trade? Since I went in on yours, what are you thinking about this Wilson, Eckler, and Najee for Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor?
Yeah, when I first saw it, and I think it's my Anthony Richardson bias that I don't really like him, but I was like, wow, that's a lot. But then the more I thought about it, it's kind of what you said. Like, those are all declining or devalued assets pretty much at this point. Eckler, Najee, and Russell Wilson.
Yep.
It potentially could be a lot of points, but we don't know for sure. And like I said, value-wise, you're never going up on Eckler and Russell Wilson.
That's what I'm saying. Now would be the time to
on
get rid of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I don't hate it, especially like you said, because I don't even say I don't hate it because that makes it sound like I don't like it. I do like it. Because again, I'm not a huge Anthony Richardson guy, but the upside is there. It's a ton of value. Like you said, the biggest worry for me is if you could get it done, because depending on how he values Richardson, the other team, he probably took him at the 102 or 103 at the latest. And Jonathan Taylor obviously is no slouch, but I like it, especially because, like as you said, you don't even need to worry actually if he's good year one or not.
Right.
It's not a great trade if he ends up just totally busting and not being very good.
Terrible
but if he kind of starts out slow, it's not even hurting you. And then if he comes on year 2, so I think it's a pretty good deal. You are losing a lot of points, but he has a lot of points on this team,
right?
So you could probably take that hit. And again, Jonathan Taylor, you would expect, is going to score you a lot of points, and Anthony Richardson could.
Right. What do you think, Scott? Are you on the same page, or do you hate this?
Yeah, I mean, this is all risk tolerance, right? Like, Richardson is the upside swing, where, and like you said earlier, you can afford that because you have 2 studs at quarterback, right? So he can be your third guy that you can, if he hits, awesome. Now you've got an amazing asset. You can move any one of them. Whereas Russ is the safe one. I don't know that his value's recovered all the way to where it should be at this point. So that's where I might have it could be one of those things where this happens maybe closer to the season, but I have a feeling that Richardson hype is gonna rage. So maybe not.
I was thinking the same thing. Like, this is the kind of trade I would usually wait till August to send. And then I was like, oh crap, wait a minute. As soon as we see Richardson throwing in OTAs, his value is going to go up. So that's why I was like, maybe this trade makes sense now.
I mean,
I know they're all declining assets, but some people are really high on Eckler and Najee, of course, coming back with a better O-line and all. Like, there is some hype around those names.
Kind of a downtrend right now, just because he's not going to catch passes and whatever. Whereas Eckler and Najee are going to get those more valuable touches. It is only a half PPR though. I think if this were full, that this would really put the value in there. But yeah, I mean, A-Rich and JT, those are the kind of players I want to take on this roster. Like, that's what I'm trying to acquire. Like, unless
you consolidate a little bit too, right?
Definitely makes sense. Yeah.
All right. So then, Scott, what was your trade? I know you got another good one here that you were trying to talk through in the sheet. So what do you think for Corey? How can you help him out today?
Okay, so your 12 team, your super flex, but your half PPR and your non-tight end premium. So that's all about the quarterbacks. You got to have the quarterbacks, and you do. So that's the best part. You already have them. So now it's just about kind of tinkering and figuring out where to put points in your lineup. So going back to the first trade we talked about earlier tonight, when you don't have that premium, now you can trade from a position of strength. I think Kittle might have a little more, let's say, points per game upside this year. Maybe not. I do like Andrews. I do have Andrews ranked higher personally. So you could trade either one
because he's got Lamar. So that's nice to keep.
Yeah. Andrews, so I mean, that's why I'd prefer to trade Kittle if we could. Let's keep that stack in play there. And so I would look to move Kittle plus Eckler. So like you moved Eckler, I also am trying to move Eckler. I think we got some good news recently that he's going to be staying there, but bad news is that they completely changed that offense. And, if you go back to last year, they just did not throw to the running back that much in Dallas. Now Eckler's a different animal. He's really a phenomenal pass catcher. So he's still going to get catches. Yeah. He's not going to have, I don't see him having an 80-90 catch season. I just don't see it. And again, half PPR, right? So let's trade Kittle and Eckler to NY Cat for your choice of Jacobs or Chubb. I would prefer Jacobs. He's a little bit younger. I think they'll both have a similar role. They'll both catch passes. They'll both get the majority of the work and a 25 first. And the reason is because that gives you that roster liquidity that you can then use those picks to, maneuver around as you need to during the season. Yeah, obviously, there's going to be attrition and there's going to be times where you're going to say, oh, if I had this player, if I had this, I can go and make that move. I can make that trade. So it's just giving you a little future capital right now and roster liquidity because your roster is stacked. So like, that's the only move that you can really make that gives you future value. So that's what I'd like to do there with that. So you're consolidating your tight ends. You're probably only starting one of them anyway. And then you're not really getting much of a downgrade, in my opinion, with Eckler. If Eckler drops off to like 40, 50 catches this year, I mean, Jacobs or Chubb can match or, at least come close to that. And then you're giving up essentially your backup tight end, really.
Yep.
So you may only be losing a few points per week and you're gaining some future value and roster liquidity to be able to make moves later.
Yeah. I mean, what you're doing here is you're taking some of the value of either Eckler or Kittle, depending on how you word it. Let's say you're taking Kittle's value, you're turning it into cash that you can then spend later on for some other player, some other, even another future pick if you want to break it up or something and move it around. Like, it just, like you said, it just gives you liquidity, which I think a roster like this, as stacked as it is, the one thing you want to have, in my opinion, when you have a good roster in May and June, is the ability to maintain that roster through the whole season. Again, it's a battle of attrition. Like you said, you're going to have things change. You're going to have some stuff come up and come down and all this. And to have that extra pick or extra couple of picks can come in really handy. Even if it's a 25 pick, I don't mind that at all. So yeah, I like that logic. And then Rocky, what was your thought on Scott's trade before we go on to our next and last segment of the night?
And look what Corey said in the comments.
That's I was going to do that at the end of this. Yeah,
okay.
I'll do this at the end. Go ahead. Oh, you're on mute, Rocky. Classic Rocky maneuver.
I've done that many a time. Yes,
I know it's your first time on a podcast. Welcome. Okay.
I don't have that much to add anyway, though, so it kind of works out. I was just saying that I kind of like what Scott did here. I said because he's so stacked, my first thought was consolidate, but the other thing you can do with that is turn it into future draft capital. He has more scoring players than he really needs, so. It makes a lot of sense what Scott's doing here. I like it a lot, and I think the value works out pretty good. Did NY Cat not have a?
He didn't have a 24.
He didn't have a 24.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. I'd rather have a 24 first. And I don't think. No. I don't think it changes it that much. I guess because the tight ends aren't quite highly as valued. It kind of works out a little more even with the 25.
I think he's more likely to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so just for the sake of people listening, there is a team in this league, J Hayes 719, who has 5 first-round picks in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going for the J Mike Invitational there, right? He's trying to collect them all and play Pokemon. But then Corey,
isn't he also doing that in Dynasty? Junkies 3, or he did it with this year's.
Is that the same guy?
I think it's the guy who took
Jay Hayes. It could be.
Yeah, I think it's him.
He loves doing that. Anyway, so before we move on to our final segment of the night, I do have to say this. Corey put this in the chat. I'm going to offer the Colts trade tonight. Awesome. I like it, Corey. Yeah, I think that. I mean, I'm not trying to brag. I think that was the best trade that of the group, and I appreciate that. Let us know. Definitely put us on Twitter. Send us DMs, hit us up on the group me and all that. Let us know how that goes. We can try to help you if there's a counter and all that. We'll be glad to help. So. With that, we move into our final segment of the evening, my favorite segment of the show. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. This might be your first time listening, but it's that's what we're doing tonight, buddy. We're finding a trade for a friend of the show. This one, I'm going to have Rocky. You read the first one, right? I read the second one. So Scott, I'm going to have you read the third one here as I pull up the roster for our friend Travis May.
Okay, submitted by Travis May at FF_Travis M on Twitter. He was on the show a few weeks ago. Shout out Travis. This is another sleeper league. Name is League of Coaches, and team name is Titan Travis. The 12-team, half PPR, 1.5 tight end premium. So that's cool. That's a little bit different twist. I like that. Start 11, quarterback, 2 running back, 2 receiver, tight end, and then your 4 flex and the super flex. Travis says he's in a good spot to compete. He's come in second, first, and third in the last 3 years. Wants to make a couple moves to push over the top.
Perfect. And then I'll go ahead and read the roster here again. Titan Travis, love that sleeper name. But he's got quarterbacks. I don't know, Dak Prescott, Tua Tagovailoa, Ryan Tannehill, our friend Tom Brady, Carson Wentz, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, such a Travis May pick, if I could say. Have that guy deep on rosters. I have owned a few myself. Running back, he's got Javonte Williams, Josh Jacobs, Ramondre Stevenson, Joe Mixon, Josh Kelly, Jamar Jefferson, and Rashad White. Pretty solid running back room. I like that one. Receiver, he's got DK Metcalf, Justin Watson, Danny Gray, Jalen Reagor. Oh, Jalen Reagor, I love it. Zay Flowers, Justin Jefferson, Josh Palmer, Cedric Tillman, Allen Robinson, Jamison Crowder. I love that name too. Tyreek Hill, Denzel Mims, Diami Brown, and Chris Moore. Quite the receiver group there. Lots of studs and duds. And then tight end, deep tight end group here too. Logan Thomas, Dalton Schultz, Will Dissly, Kylan Granson, Adam Troutman, Mike Gesicki, Peyton Hendershot, Sam Laporta, and Cade Otton. Whew. He's also got 2 24 firsts, a second, a third, a fourth, and then a full battery of 25 and 26 picks. So yeah, this is very clearly in my mind a Travis May style team. So with that, I guess we'll kick it to Scott. Well, we had Scott go first, the first one, right? So Rocky, why don't we do your trade first? Do you want to do that one?
Sure. I wasn't really sure what to do with Travis's team. I came in with a little bit of a smaller trade this time. I was looking at tight end. You said deep, but it's deep, but not very top heavy. Yeah. But I didn't really find anything that I loved that I thought matched up real well for both teams. So I just ended up trying to make a little bit of a smaller trade just to give him more points. He did talk. I do think it's a contending team. He's got a lot of points on this roster. And I was just going to add a little more. Somebody you could throw in the flex spot. I had him trading Rashad White to Rocks Tops for Amari Cooper in a third. I do think White is worth a little more than Cooper at this point in their careers, but I also don't think White is necessarily that good. Some of his analytic type, if you look at it, some of the deeper numbers, they were not very good for Rashad White last year, and that team's going to be trash. So Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask at quarterback. I don't know how much they're scoring. I don't know what Rashad White's going to do. And Amari Cooper, I do think is going to start. I think Deshaun Watson's going to be much better than he was from what we saw last year. Amari Cooper is still going to be the wide receiver one for this year, at least anyway. So I think it helps him try and win another title here. He did say he came in first one of those years.
Yeah.
And again, it's just a little bit of a smaller move just to kind of add some points into his lineups at one of those flex spots in the start 11. He could throw him in there. And he's not super deep at wide receiver either. If he gets an injury or two, Cooper would help as well. He's got 3 really good ones, but then it kind of drops off after that.
Yeah, and Scott, what are your thoughts on Rocky's trade there? Is that big enough for you? Is that enough of a trade or small good here?
Yeah, I mean, that's fine because we're taking a guy right now that has a lot of, I'm not going to say hype, but it feels like solid value to the point where
I think he's overvalued a little bit.
He's overvalued. Exactly. I just don't think it's going to be a great offense. It'll probably be fine. And if he gets the receiving work, which is what he's supposed to get, then that should have some value. But I think, Cooper's a much safer asset, and I don't know that he'll necessarily have less of a shelf life than Rashad White. I mean, the Bucs are kind of doing this retooling thing right now where they're kind of stuck. So there's not much that they can do. But in a year or two, things are going to change. I would guess that whole backfield will be different. If you look who's
Rashad
left,
White will be retired
it's whoever's been there, because they don't have any money. They don't have any resources to go get anyone else. Right. So he may be the guy by default. But running backs, we know they're a dime a dozen. We know somebody will get cut. We know somebody will pop up somewhere. And I would not be surprised if, 3-4 months from now, we're just like, yeah, remember when everybody thought Rachaad White was going to be a thing? Like, I don't expect him to disappear, but he doesn't have the role that Amari Cooper does in his offense. So yeah, this is just one of those savvy moves that we might look back on in 6 months and go, yeah, that was a good trade.
Well, I think you guys kind of nailed it. Rachaad White's the one I think that has the biggest delta from reality to current value. And that's what I would try to capitalize on. Just try to go get that value in another asset that's not going to crater. I think Rachaad White's going to be a fine running back, but if I could pivot to a receiver with this kind of roster and having 3 solid running backs ahead of him, 4 if you count Javonte and he comes back healthy right out of the gate, I mean, you don't need Rachaad White on your roster. So I'd be more than happy to move him for a receiver. So I like this trade a lot. I actually thought this was not necessarily a small trade because it actually does help his team a lot. But again, calculator comes out and says Rachaad White is worth more than Amari Cooper on DTC, which is kind of shocking to me, but it makes total sense. Like I see, because that's the overvalue, right? Like that's sort of more market value than what I would say. So I thought it was great.
Yeah,
Scott, what was your? Oh,
I was sorry. I was just going to say, older point scoring wide receivers are always undervalued too, and that's what Amari Cooper is at this point. It was like 29, I think. So yeah,
yep.
I could definitely see low end 1, high end 2 in his range of outcomes. I'm not saying he's definitely going to be that, but.
Well, and I've actually got an article coming out probably next week for Fantasy Pros about veteran wide receivers, right? And I should probably make sure that Cooper's in there because that's an easy one. And it's just, again, terrific value there. But Scott, why don't you get into your trade and then I'll go last?
Yeah, so I desperately tried to find a tight end that I could upgrade to here, but it's just like every team kind of has one. And, they're really, really well dispersed in this league. And I just could not find one. I tried to move Javonte Williams to the Samaje Perine team, but like they only have 2 tight ends on their whole roster. Like that didn't make sense. I mean, maybe
moving Javonte also.
I tried so hard and I just could not find the right spot for him. And then I was looking at the quarterback situation and it's kind of a strange. It's like kind of the haves and have-nots. And I mean, that's not really strange because that is common in a lot of leagues, but especially it's weird how few quarterbacks are rostered. In my opinion, it's just strange that like he's rostering DTR, right? Which is something I would do too. But then like you have multiple teams that have only like 3 or 4. Half the league has only 3 or 4 quarterbacks on their roster. Like that's just strange to me. I mean, I have leagues where I have 13, 14 quarterbacks on my roster. So like it's foreign to me. So ultimately I ended up kind of just doing the boring thing here, but everybody's posting the pictures of Tua, he's back and he's jacked and he's ready to roll. Like, great. let me sell him then. So I unfortunately could not find another good team though to move him to. I went to Cymbalta Overdose mostly just because I wanted to say that name. That's a great name. That is such a great team name. For Daniel Jones and a 25 first. And again, another team without a 24 first, so I'd much prefer the 24. I don't know that there's that much of a value difference between those two. Personally, I prefer Daniel Jones. I just think he gives you a better floor. And I have this weird thing about teams with Dak Prescott, which Travis has. Last year, I had 5 leagues with Dak and Daniel Jones paired together, and like 4 of them were top 3 and 2 of them were champions. And I don't know why, and it's pure coincidence, I'm quite sure, but it's just for some reason that duo really like kicked some ass last year. So I was just trying to replicate that here.
I don't mind it. Yeah, I mean, I'll just kind of jump in. I think the tear down from Tua to Daniel Jones seems pretty spot on. Like, I totally get
market wise it makes sense. Like, right. That's not how I see it, which is obviously why
production wise they're very close, I think. But, right, like, yeah. I think Daniel Jones is going to have another good year. They tried to add some more receivers to their group. Barkley's still there. They got Waller. I mean, like, I don't think Jones is going to be a bad player, but I do think the values are different enough that adding that first is nice. Like we just said before for Corey's team, like this one, Travis, you then get a 25 first to kind of move around later or to send to someone else or whatever. It gives you some liquidity. So again, not to keep it too simple, but yeah, this is a pretty straightforward trade. It's a tear down, adding some liquidity. I'm a fan of it. What do you think, Rocky?
Yeah, I think it's fine value wise. I know Scott hates Tua, so I prefer Tua significantly over Daniel Jones, and I get Daniel Jones has more rushing upside, and Tua doesn't have that, but
it's risk tolerance.
Yeah, and I do think that is what it is. Ceiling. I think Tua is safer, and especially with Tyreek.
Interesting. That's a hot take. Hang on, let's back up.
I'm not that worried about the concussions like everyone else is. I mean, if they're both on the field, I think Tua is safer.
Yeah.
If he's on the field, that's the whole spicy.
I mean, his career's over. One more, he's done.
Yep.
One more, he's done just by public. It's like those things where like you're guilty by public opinion when you do something. Like if he gets one more, it's over. They will never.
What other quarterback has had this kind of concussion history?
Not necessarily quarterback. I'm saying other players.
I don't even know any other players that have had this kind of concussion history, like 2 in 2 weeks kind of thing.
The
like
way that he's had them too, and yeah, just it's so public and it's so like
there was a thought about him retiring in the offseason. Like it's not. This is smoke. Yeah. This is smoke. There's got to be fire. So I'm not.
Yes, how often do quarterbacks get a bunch of concussions? I don't think that something's wrong with Tua that he's more. I mean, because he had them, he's obviously got a better chance of a concussion. But I don't think there's something into his game that makes him more susceptible to concussion.
Yeah, there was flukiness to it. Yeah,
it's like he doesn't fall correctly or something. He actually talked about they were training him on how to land better. Like literally, like he just doesn't fall correctly. And I'm like, well, that kind of fits. I could see that being a thing, but how do you train that out of somebody? Yeah, it's just like an in the moment thing.
That's my thing. Yeah. Like it's not like we see quarterbacks getting concussed all the time anyway. I've heard the guys like Brandon Cooks. You heard forever. He's one concussion away from never playing again, and then he never got another concussion, or if he did, but it was years later, and it didn't
tell anybody. Yeah.
There are guys I can think of, like Kyle Pitts is a guy nobody knows other than it rhymes with Kyle Pitts. He was a linebacker for the Bears. He had a lot of concussions.
I was just going to ask if you had a concussion. I was like, no, that's Pitts, buddy. Are you okay? Like,
yeah. Chris Borland, he was a linebacker in Wisconsin. Yeah. He played for the Niners. He was like a beast for like a year, and then all of a sudden he retired. Yeah. Just the concussions got to him. There's been, Luke Kuechly, concussions there. I mean, but again, those are linebackers. Right, those are guys who are knocking heads every play. So, like, I get what you're saying, Rocky. Is like, there is a flukiness to it, but it still just takes one. I
get that it's possible. I'm not. Again, I feel like I've heard it before, and I don't. Like I said, especially at the quarterback position, it's obviously you can get concussions. You got 2 concussions, but it's not something where like we see quarterbacks getting concussions all the time, and like we have to assume he's getting a concussion next year or something like that. So I'm not as worried about it as everybody else is. I feel like he's going to be on the field. I don't think he's definitely like if he gets his head like destroyed against the ground, maybe he's not coming back ever again. It's not even technically like if he gets a concussion, he's definitely done for the rest of his career either.
Of course, no. But there is a player that I compare him to, and that's Andrew Luck, right? There is some risk about this, and just as a player, as a human, as a man, right? And so like I'm playing this game, I love this game, but at some point you walk away, and I think Andrew Luck was the one that obviously affected a lot of people in Dynasty to be like, what the hell, that came out of nowhere. And I think we're just in a new era right now where it's, obviously safety is a little bit more focused. We're talking about a whole bunch of changes in the league and everything. I don't think Tua is the type to just retire out of nowhere. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm just saying, like Scott said, the societal pressure is different than it was 10 years ago. It used to be get back in there and play. Now society in general is kind of being more like, why are you letting him play? And I think some of that, again, unlikely, but could have a little bit of a hand in this at some point. But again, not to beleaguer the point. I think that was actually a good discussion on Tua, but I like the trade. I don't mind sending Tua. I don't think he's terrible. I don't think he's, trash. I don't think he's going to retire. I'm just saying there is a lot of risk there. That's all I'm saying. On that note, we'll head into my trade, which is the third one of this batch for Travis. And I just put step 1, drop Tom Brady. I'm sorry, Travis, but it is time. Tom Brady's officially out of the game. I think you can move on. And I think it's funny too, because I mean, maybe there is some logic, I guess, to hold him because, like, what's the point? But like Scott said, there's a lot of teams that only have 3 or 4. Like, I can't imagine Tom Brady being worth holding if there are
some
other
of us
players.
Still have Andrew Luck on our rosters.
Well,
not
no
anymore.
comment on
I
that
did
one.
For like 3 years.
Please tell me that's not true.
Yeah, no, I don't.
But if you held on to Odell Beckham Jr., I guess you might have something, right? But no, I think that was my first step, is drop Tom Brady. And I'm sorry, it's time. And then mine was kind of a bigger, smaller trade, was just more of a pivot to get a better, younger running back and to kind of line this up. So mine was to send Tyreek to Rock Stops, like you said, I think, Scott. No, it was Rocky that had Rock Stops, right? Yeah, for Jahmyr Gibbs and then Charlie Jones, just like throw in another little guy in there.
This would actually work well with my trade.
You guys could combine those. Yeah.
Actually, so let's combine them, right? So we've got Tyreek and Rashad White for Jahmyr Gibbs, Amari Cooper, Charlie Jones, and a third.
I do. I love it.
That's not bad. That's a little
I love that.
That kind of jives. The other logic there, of course, is you'd be sending Rashad White and getting back Gibbs. You'd be sending Tyreek and getting Amari. So like you're kind of changing your values a little bit. Yeah. But I also feel like there are some teams that I look at it and I'm like, well, the position of strength here is the running back. And kind of what Scott was saying before, given the scoring settings, I'd rather have a solid tight end. Well, if I can't have a solid tight end, then I want a dominant room, even more dominant. Like I want it to make it like impressive and like, oppressive to my opponents and be like, it is the best running back room, because then also it gives you a lot more flexibility to make trades for a tight end or something like that down the road. I also think trading for a running back is a little risky, as we always talk about in the show. We're pretty much, I wouldn't say anti-running back, but running back lower volume. And I just think Tyreek has still got some name value. There's still some cachet to him and people like him and all this, that, and the other. But I mean, it's kind of nice having Tua and Tyreek. So like that would be tough to break up, but I don't know. Scott, what are your thoughts on this trade?
Yeah, I mean, so the interesting thing about Tyreek is I thought there would be a huge buy window after he was on he's on a podcast. I'm going to play 2 more years, whatever. His contract actually could be 3 more years because there's an option there. So I was like, okay. So I was like, yeah, let's go buy him. I'm going to go send a first because if I can get 2, if I know for sure I've got 2 more years of Tyreek Hill, I'm in. Let's go. Sign me up.
That's all you need. Yeah.
So yeah, I was all about it, but it hasn't really happened. I haven't been able to make any trades for him. So, I'd like to keep him if I'm competing, but also, getting a guy like Gibbs, I just feel like his value is super overinflated right now too. So you could even trade him down the line maybe for something else. So I don't mind the value on that at all.
That was kind of my thinking, is like, if I can pivot from Tyreek, which I think, even let's say half of the league thinks he's lower value because he announced that, right? Not that it's accurate, but half the league thinks that. But I would guess 11 of the 12 teams are thinking Gibbs is higher and on the way up. So even if you're just trading into an asset that's the same value, but trending the different direction, right? And like pivoting from a down to an up, and then you can trade that up for a little bit more. Like it's a way to kind of get out of the down and turn it around in a way for that value. That was kind of my thinking. Rocky, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think that's a super interesting trade, actually. Value, it depends on how they value Hill and Gibbs. I can see both there being a wide range of values there, depending on the person, and how ageist they are and things like that. I think it's fine. I like it. I think my only issue I think that I would have is, it looks like it pretty much leaves him with DK and Justin Jefferson, and then a lot of risk. And he's not deep at wide receiver to begin with. That would be my only worry. But
you don't like Jalen Rager? You don't think he's a starter this year?
PPR. It is only
well, sure, but it is
They're gonna put somebody in there.
Yeah, it's a 2 receiver, but still, that's bleak. Yeah, Zay Flowers, maybe your 3rd receiver. That's not great.
That's why we do the 2 trades together.
Yeah, that's right.
I like Amari.
I actually do like that a lot.
Yeah, kind of fits. What a weird twist there, Rocky. Well done. Good trade. All right. Well, any other comments on Titan Travis's team here from Sleeper and our buddy Travis May? All right. Well, with that, we're going to do something we never do. We're going to talk about a trade. We're going into the chat here. We got Corey in a 10-team league. If you wanted to take JSN over Stroud, are you against it? I'll try to trade back from 104, but might just pull the trigger if I can't get what I want. He also mentioned later it is a start 9 team. So start 9, 10 teams, super flex. I mean, I don't know. I'll kick it to you first, Scott, because I know you were kind of curious about this one too. But I have some other questions. He mentioned too, he's got the 102, which he'll probably take A-Rich, is what he said. So he does have a little bit of a quarterback benefit there, I guess. He's also got Stafford and Lance, so probably just take Lance. Well, take Stroud is what he was saying there. So what do you think about this, Scott?
So the initial question, if I had no more context, I was just going to say, sure, take your guy. It's fine. I've seen it happen plenty of times. I mean, if that's what you want to do, if you really believe in him that much, go for it. In general, I'm going to take the quarterback over the receiver, any league, any format, because that's my philosophy.
Well, super flex, not one QB.
But yeah, well, right.
Not any format.
And so, well, yeah, but I don't play in many.
There, okay. You got me on that one.
I also don't play in any 10-team leagues. So
True.
I'm not speaking from experience here either. I'm just saying what I would do if I wasn't a 10-team start 9. Like, that's 90 starters.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like half to a third of most of my leagues. I mean, I'm in like some 14-team start 11s. You know, I mean, that's like, it's not even comparable. So I'm just kind of speaking from what I think I would do. And especially now with more context, saying you only have Stafford and Lance. First of all, why do you have Stafford? Dump him for whatever you can get. There's just no point, because if you're trying to get your 24 first back and tank, then first of all, get your 24 first back, then dump Stafford.
There you go.
And then just draft quarterbacks until you get 2 studs.
One hits.
I mean, that's going to be your best bet. I mean, listen, I don't think a year from now, if you decide to go for Caleb Williams and you're sitting with Richardson and Stroud and Lance, like, you're going to be disappointed. I don't see how you're going to be disappointed. Now, if you ultimately think you're going to be able to pull that off, and you think that you'd rather have Caleb Williams and Anthony Richardson and Jackson Smith and Jigba, that's fine. But I also think in a year from now, you could just trade Stroud for JSN, or you could trade A-Rich for JSN plus or whatever. You know what I mean? So like, you could just do that later anyway, or maybe a receiver that ends up being better or whatever. So I just think the quarterback gives you a little bit of value insulation to be able to move those guys later. And if you're sitting on a bunch of quarterbacks, it's not like they're necessarily hurting you. I guess it depends on what platform you play on, and if they're on a taxi squad, not getting you potential points, things like that. So then there's some gamesmanship in there. But in general, I'm going quarterback.
Getting deep there, Scott. I love it. And I'll just kind of pivot here just to remind everybody, draft for talent, trade for need. Right? Like, take the guy with the most value. I agree with Scott. I think the quarterback has more value, even if you like JSN more. That being said, it is your team. It is your league. Go have fun. If you like JSN more, go get him. But I'd rather draft Stroud and then wait a month and trade Stroud for JSN plus a second or something crazy. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's how I like to do it. But go do your thing, man. Go have fun with it. Corey, with no E on this one. Go do that one, Corey. What do you think about that, Rocky? Or what are your thoughts on that trade in general from Corey?
I thought it was a good thing that Scott actually asked us to ask Corey how many starters, because 10-team, it does kind of
I've seen some deep 10 teams position, too. Yeah.
To value the quarterback position. But I think the 9 starters actually kind of evens it out to more maybe like a 12-team league, because the fewer starting guys you're starting, the higher percentage of points you're getting from your quarterback. Like, if you have 10 or 11 starters, it makes a bigger difference. Like, you can cover like that. I play in a lot of leagues that are 10 or 11 starters and 12-team, and that's part of the reason I like to do the cheaper quarterback thing, is I can make it up elsewhere. Whereas you don't have as many spots to make it up elsewhere. You got 7 other spots basically to make it up elsewhere. So I would definitely lean the quarterback there. I'm with you too. I would go with Stroud.
Yeah, and again, no, none of us are saying if you draft JSN, you're fired. You know what I mean? Like, go get your guy, right? Like, it's your team. I mean, again, we've been doing this for a while. I'm sure you guys both get DMs from people that are like, should I do this? Should I do that? And I remember there was one guy, I think it was last year. He just, I don't know, kept arguing with me. And I'm like, dude, you asked my opinion. I'm giving you my opinion. I don't, like, if you don't like it, you don't have to take it. Like, I don't know what you want from me. Like, I'm just telling you what I think. And he's like, well, I'm just trying to make sure I'm making the right decision. I'm like, whatever decision you make is the right decision. Like, don't overthink it. It's your team. Have fun, right? That's the whole point. So, yes. So anyway, Corey, hopefully that helped you out there. Again, no wrong chances, no wrong choices, but definitely tag us. Let us know how that goes. And maybe you find a trade partner too, right? Maybe something wonky happens at 103 and JSN goes at 103 and you're like, perfect, I'll take Bryce Young. Like, who knows? But definitely keep us posted on that. With that, I think we're finally done with the show. Do you guys have anything else you want to talk about on this FMAT Palooza?
I think I'm good. We actually could keep this under an hour and a half.
I know. I love these FMATs. It's the perfect way to do it. So with that, we are going to call it a night. Obviously, it is one of our favorite things to do. Well, I think we should do another one of these before the season. What do you guys think? Like another one maybe
Definitely.
in August sometime?
Yeah, no doubt.
I think that's when you see a lot of action. You start to see redrafters kind of get back into things and casual people start to get back into things. So obviously, Corey with an E, keep us posted on your Colts trade. Travis, hopefully, if you listen to this, I'll make sure that I send it to him too. But make sure you let us know if you can pull up that double trade that we had there for Rocks Tops. That was kind of fun. But with that, we're going to get it out of here. So again, we've got all three of us. So we all get to give our handles tonight. It's I'm Andrew at Andrew Hall FF. We've got Rocky at Dynasty FF Addict. And obviously Scott at Scott_Sidlow. Nobody fault. Everybody did great. There's nobody to blame tonight. I love it. That's the way to end the show. Follow us at Dynasty Junkies. Follow us at the DAP Network at DAP_Network or at DAP Network on YouTube. We are a proud member of the Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network, or the DAP Network, if you will. I'll DAP this way, even though Rocky's not looking. But yes, please keep us posted on your trades, everybody. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. We love the reviews. We haven't read them yet, but we love them. And I'm sure we'll be looking at those here in the next couple weeks and trying to figure out what we can glean. I'll kick it to you, Rocky, and then you can kick it to Scott to get us out of here.
Why are we kicking it to two people? What the hell is that supposed to be?
You want to say goodbye? I don't know. It's an FMAT.
Okay, you wrap it up, Rocky. It's your show.
Go for it.
You wrap it up better than I do. I'm done.
That's why I
wasn't even looking at the screen. So
Rocky's already checked out. He's
called me out for typing a little message on my computer. Andrew.
The guy spends an hour
and
15 minutes with both of us, and he's over it already. Like, look at that. No wonder
Scott does this much better.
I know. Scott, get us out of here.
All right.
He does all that good stuff much better.
Well, that's fine. Well, we appreciate the DAP Network and Daddy Russ. So shout out to the DAP. Shout out to everybody in the chat tonight. Lots of guys in here. Even without a guest, we managed to draw some people. That is incredible. We appreciate you guys. Next week the next few weeks I'm very excited for here. We've got some really awesome guests coming on. We're gonna do something a little bit different than we've done before. So looking forward to getting into all that. Keep your FMAT submissions coming. We appreciate those. And, like we said, we'll do another one of these shows. And so with that, let's get on out of here. For Andrew, for Rocky, I'm Scott. Junkies out.